So after his first war, at the end of his time in service, this guy took an exploding bullet to the mouth and it blew out his jaw. And he managed to get patched up. In fact, it's kind of comical. A newspaper ran the story that he had died, and he wrote a letter to the editor explaining that was those reports are greatly exaggerated. Anyway, so he got patched up and he was disfigured for the rest of his life, but functional. And when the next war broke out, just a short while later, he attempted to re-enlist, and his request was denied. So he lived out the rest of his life as a humble farmer. Now, I didn't know the man, and I don't know what his motive was for re-enlisting, but having known a fair number of vets, I know that different people have different reasons. But I'd like to think that the reason he wanted to go back in was that he knew that this was something he was designed to be good at. And he felt like the cause was just, and he felt like it was the greatest benefit that he could render to the world. Now, Paul talks about how we are each different parts in the body of Christ. We all have specific strengths and weaknesses. We're very particular. Each and every one of us has differences, one from another. And those differences can matter an awful lot. When he was asked about his service and why he did things the way he did and why he was so good at what he did, he said he did what he was told as well as he could. And so he was quite humble about this. Now, I'm going to say more about that in another video, but I want to tie it to this idea of re-enlisting. It's up to each of us to figure out what we bring to the table. God has stacked the deck. He has fielded in the military, in the modern military, every unit has a template from higher of what people they need to fill the unit. And it's a list of ranks and job descriptions. Those are two separate things. And so in order to be ready to go, that unit has to have a certain percentage of those slots with a person who's trained, who has the right rank and the right job, the right training. The Lord has seen to it that his army is fully staffed. You have specific strengths that have a place in his purpose. And you have the glorious responsibility and opportunity to figure out what those are, to rise up to them, and to perform them. I could talk for a very long time about what some of these are that you might not even know, because they don't need to be flashy. So often success in these sorts of things, these sorts of team-oriented efforts, it relies on skills that many people will take for granted, but things that absolutely need to get done. In the military, I think that the job that's most looked down upon is that of cooks. And I may have talked about this before, so forgive me. But in the units I was in, we tended to have cooks. We had a cook section. And for various reasons, I think this was looked down upon. I think cooks, there's an aptitude test that you have to take when you get into the military, and I think the cooks had the lowest score requirement. And so that was one reason people looked down on them. Also, it tends to be the case that most people don't think highly of cooks in terms of how necessary they are to success on the battlefield. I would disagree, and I think part of that's because I will always be a fat kid at heart. I love food, at least I used to. And So that was another reason. The other reason is that they didn't have many promotion opportunities. And most of the time in the military, rank is very much wound into the respect that you have for someone. If you see some grizzled sergeant that's been around forever and they've been promoted, it means that a whole lot of people saw this person as valuable. And unfortunately, the opposite could be assumed as well, although I certainly wouldn't agree. So I remember when I took command of one company, I was meeting with all of the section chiefs, the people in charge of the various sections of the unit. We had about 120 people. And it came time for me to meet with the head cook. And he was, for the military, he was an older gentleman and had tons of experience. And then in his section, he was a sergeant and everybody else was a private, pretty much. And that's an unusual thing. Usually there's a stratification of rank. And I said, Sergeant, what can I do for you to help you do your job? And that was my question to each of these section chiefs. And I was expecting something complicated, but he came back to me. He didn't even hesitate. He said, Sir, I need a pot. And he's a cook. He's got tons of pots. I said, a pot? Explain this to me, please. I don't understand. And he said, well, and he laid out a very good argument for why he needed a pot. And I said, is this a fancy pot? He said, no, it's a regular pot. And I guess just having one more would make his life a million times easier and enable him to more effectively do his job. And so I turned to my supply sergeant and I said, can we get this guy a pot? What would it take? He said, sir, it takes a signature. You say it, it's done. And I said, let it be so. Right? Make it so, right? Now this cook looked at me like I had just saved his baby puppy from an icy pond. He was that grateful. He almost teared up. I mean, it was a big deal. He said, sir, I was confused. I didn't understand why. He said, sir, I have asked the previous 3 company commanders or whatever he said over this many years for this pot, and you're the first person who said yes. And I said, well, I'm glad it means so much to you, but your job is to cook the food, and my job is to help you get the food cooked. So I'm happy to help. If you need anything else, please let me know. And so from that point on, I got free food. Oh, gosh, which was against the rules. Officers were supposed to pay. And this sergeant, of course, it was his job to know that because he served the food. And so he'd send a runner every single meal before anyone else ate. He said, sir, the sergeant says you got to check the chow to make sure it's okay for the troops. And I think that might be like the one time in my life I got an immediate reward for doing the right thing. But honestly, as much as I liked Army food, I know many people don't. This is actually, I always tried to do the right thing for my soldiers. And whatever rank I was at, I tried to do whatever I could to help whoever I could. And I think this is one of the rare times where it resulted in someone having greater joy. And so it's a funny story, but sadly, it's probably one of the only ones I have from 10 years of service where I think I actually made a difference. Okay, so getting back to this sniper, what does this have to do with trying to get back in and being denied? When you find what you're good at, when you find how to make the greatest impact, nothing else can measure up to that. And when you're all in, it's all you want to do is to do that thing. Now, at the top level, what we're aiming for is the point where the 3 Nephites or John the Revelator got, where they begged the Lord to leave them on the field. to leave them here for as long as he possibly could, which was to until his return, so that they could do everything they could to progress his purpose here on the earth. And he granted their request. Other people have come to this point as well. We don't know all their names, but Alma was one of them. In Alma 43:1, we read, "And now it came to pass that the sons of Alma did go forth among the people to declare the word unto them. And Alma also himself could not rest, and he also went forth." When you get in the groove of the purpose of your creation, which can be multifaceted, and it probably is, it's probably not something as simple as being a cook. You're going to find that it's very difficult for you to accept anything less. And you want with all of your heart to stay in the fight. There's a lot more I could say about that, but I think I'm going to leave it there.